I'm Annie.
And I'm Leah.
And this is Lactation Business Coaching with Annie and Leah, where we talk about the smart way to create a compassionate and professional private practice.
Let's dive in. Hey there, Annie.
Hey there, Leah. How's it going?
Going really well. I am excited for our talk today because we're doing some reflection, and that's always nice to take a minute to look back and see really how far we've come, right?
Yeah. And the reason we're reflecting is because both of us took the IBCLC exam earlier this spring because it's 10 years since we each became IBCLCs.
Yes, I know. And it just was so interesting to study again and to think about where my brain was, where my, what's going to happen, all of that, where that was 10 years ago to where it was now. And I was in such a different place, but with just a different kind of excitement. And then this time it was, one, knowing that I never have to take this test again by choice. I could take it, I guess, if I wanted to, but by choice, I have a choice now. I don't have to take this test again. But also, I had no idea what was going to come at the time. I wasn't really sure what was going to come of becoming a lactation consultant. And now I got to study in a way of oh my gosh, all this knowledge and everything that I've learned and what I've been able to apply it to. It just had such a different meaning. It was really interesting. What was your feel with studying and preparing this time versus the first time?
I was legit terrified when I was planning this time.
Sure.
Because first of all, I was really busy with my private practice, actually seeing clients. I'm when am I going to study? I have to write care plans. I just didn't plan it well. And so then I felt like I was cramming. I was at my daughter's softball game, watching the game, but then listening to audio versions of one of the trainings that I had signed up for. Yes. And I was this is not how I want to live my life. This is not at all aligned with how I try to have not do work stuff when I'm actually watching my kid do something. Although with softball, there was a lot of time where my kid was not doing anything. So
right.
It was okay. There's a lot of downtime in softball.
There is.
And I did plenty of standing up and cheering. It was funny for me studying to see how many things I couldn't remember that I know that I had remembered. And then how many things where I'm oh yeah, I do totally still have that somewhere in the recesses of my memory, but I don't use it, but I actually still know it. And that was kind of wild. And that I did feel my 10-year previous self was kind of sitting next to me while I was studying. Cause I just had these moments of, I don't know what you would call it, not deja vu, but because I actually did do it before, but really feeling connected with the person that I was 10 years ago.
It was really interesting exercise of I broke out my note cards. So my business partner and I, before we started our company together, we had studied together, and so we had made mountains and mountains, I guess I should say cases and cases, because we had the little boxes that you put note cards in. And we had made so many note cards, and they have been in a box in the back of my closet for the last 10 years, So I broke out the note cards, and it was just such a moment of just reflection on, oh my gosh, how far I've come and just how much has happened that I never could have expected or planned for, how my business grew, how it's evolved. And it was just kind of fun to sit with the person I was 10 years ago, looking at these note cards because they hadn't been touched since. So it seemed like this relic, I got to sit with my little relic of my former self and where we were, and gosh, how dedicated we were to making sure we passed this test. And we spent so much time working on all of those note cards. But it was such an interesting time, just like you. I just felt this very maybe nostalgic, or I don't know the right terminology for it either, to just be kind of, wow, how much has changed, but also I still feel really connected to that person that started down this path and like was so open to whatever comes of this, and it was helpful to embrace that again of, when things are evolving, there's uncertainty and all of that. And it was fun to go back and be like, look, you didn't know what was going to happen. And look at what's happened in 10 years. You've come so far and you've used all this amazing knowledge and grown more knowledge. And the other thing that was really interesting was at the time, obviously, when we weren't practicing as IBCLCs, the knowledge was just knowledge, right? And then now it felt very like, this is applicable to this. This is applicable to that. This is something that I've used. This information helped me understand this. This information helped me apply this technique or whatever. It was like, there's a lot more pulling together of those treacherous facts that you're just like, do I really need to know this? Like, does this really need to live in my head? And then you're like, oh yeah, well, it does help you connect those dots and apply that technique and stuff like that. So that was really cool too, to see that as well. But from a business aspect though, Annie, what are your thoughts about reflecting on being a business owner for all this time? I know you have done business in other ways too, and so have I, but as a lactation private practice business owner for 10 years, tell me about that for you. What's your thoughts on that?
It has been interesting looking back and seeing that my goals when I first became a lactation consultant they were almost like super broad, so broad as to like basically not be even really goals at all. It was more like I really needed to make a change in my professional life because what I was doing before wasn't working anymore and wasn't a path I wanted to continue to go down. And that was working, trying to push ahead and as a screenwriter and to follow those Hollywood dreams, and that those Hollywood dreams ended up not being satisfying to me, not being where I wanted my energy to go. And so I was thinking mostly about what could I do that would be I always like a challenge, number one. So the fact that I could take some classes, do some trainings, get some hands-on trainings and take a test that would tell me if I made it and then have something, letters I could put after my name for sure. Sign me up. I always really do like to try new things and expand myself. But it was also more like, what could I do in this moment, in this stage of my life, in this place where I'm at? And I wasn't really thinking about it beyond that. I think possibly in my mind, I just was so much in the now of having new babies and having, things going on in our family life that needed attention more than my work did. And also feeling like I just don't know, the thought of figuring out any kind of 5-year plan, let alone 10 or 20-year plan, just seemed really big to me. And so I'm like, I can do this right now. This is something I can make happen right now. And if I do it well enough, it will keep me from having to go and find some kind of corporate job where I'll be gone 60 hours a week and never see my kids again. So that was sort of where my head was at. And then reflecting on where it's gone is that I've turned it into a full-time job. I kind of made myself the dream job that I didn't want to have if somebody else was giving it to me.
Right.
I've been able to get rid of all of the random freelancing things that I was doing to supplement my lactation work when I was first getting started. I wasn't just doing private practice home visits. I was also doing copywriting and I was doing script analysis and I was doing consulting, all this like random. I even wrote a second screenplay for Hallmark that got made while I was also like really putting into my lactation career. But then that was like kind of ended there. Like that was my last goodbye to Hollywood was that one.
Yeah.
But I was writing movie reviews. So what I've been able to do is build my private practice so that I could say no to those things where I was like, I don't want to be a movie critic. 20-year-old Annie totally wanted to be a movie critic. And then I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to watch movies and write about them. I want to watch movies and that's it. Full stop. I had a book blog. I decided I was like, I don't need to keep my book blog anymore because I'm not trying to be this critic or this literary person or whatever it is that I was trying to do with my book blog. So being able to really, I guess what I've seen is that over 10 years, I went from lactation being a part of all of the different things I was doing, to make money and to support my family and have a balanced life, into being the thing that I'm doing, and then not just doing for private practice, but I've just loved the conference stuff that I've been doing in the last couple of years, and the writing and the speaking, but putting together speakers and conferences. And it's just, I feel very happy. And I do feel like the work that I'm doing now, putting on conferences like Clinical Complexities in Private Practice that just ended,
which is amazing.
It was so fun. You can still buy all of the individual topics, but you just can't get the whole bundle anymore. But that brought everything together. I'm like, I'm writing, I'm producing, I'm coordinating, I'm creating content, and I'm working with amazing people about topics that I'm really deeply passionate about. And I'm like, I couldn't be happier, honestly, in terms of where things have gone. But I didn't know, this was not my plan. I had no idea.
Isn't it so interesting? Like you could have never cultivated this in that moment 10 years ago. It had to get a life of its own and like evolve and change. And that's really awesome. And you have pulled in so many wonderful skills that you have beyond just being a lactation consultant, and all these other skills, like you said, like producing and copywriting and all these skills, and been able to work it into the field of lactation, which I think is just like such a gift to the profession itself. Is like, we need that, and that you put on these conferences and everything. I just think that's super, super, super cool.
What are your reflections over 10 years in private practice? Because I know that you started out with an intentional plan. Like you were very focused on what you were doing. You're kind of like the opposite of me.
Yeah.
So tell me about your plans and then how that's all
evolved. I think I've talked about this before. When my business partner and I finished studying, we were like, okay, we've really enjoyed meeting all this time. Like, let's start a business together. And we were serious about it. Like, we had a business plan. We've got all of our ducks in a row, so to speak. And we even started promoting our business before. We were like, we're not going to start until we get our test results. So we were just hoping on hope that we passed. But we're like, we're opening November 1st was going to be our first day that we were going to see clients. And we literally had clients on November 1st. It was crazy because we got our test results on 10/28. 10/28 was test result day. And then we started seeing clients on November 1st. And so we were very like, like, hey, we're going to start this business together. But I didn't have any idea about the explosive growth that we would have. Our market just at the time was ready for more lactation support because there were several consultants that had been doing it, but were moving out of the space or retiring. And so it was just really ripe for growth. And so it was so crazy. I mean, we were just blown away. I mean, from day one, we were just so busy. And that was also really hard because I had been home with my kiddos, really doing work that I could do at home with them. So I was a business to business sales rep for several children's brands. And so I was just doing like calls and phone sales, stuff like that, but nothing that I had to be away a lot of the time. And that was perfect for that time of my life. And so it was really almost kind of scary because I had never experienced being gone that much and, had not really intended on being a full-time lactation consultant. Everybody talked about like, it takes time, your business has to build. The only book that we could get our hands on at the time about lactation consultant private practice, did make it sound like it. Don't worry, like it's not going to come very quickly. You have to really cultivate. It's going to take a long time. So it grew really fast. And that was a big learning curve. We had to really learn so much so quickly and changed a lot of things in our families and that kind of thing. So it was a really, really interesting time, but I don't think that I would do it any differently because I think I really found what I needed to. I had no career aspirations other than I knew I was pretty good at sales. And so I was like, oh, I'm doing this, but I was like, I don't know where I'm going. And I'm a mom and I'm just kind of doing the mom thing was my main thing. And it really gave me a place to be me. And this is Leah, and Leah's a lactation consultant and a mom, and I so appreciate that. How it grew, I think, is the only way that I would have come to figure that out. If it had grown really slowly, I think it would have still felt kind of like a side gig and, kind of did it on the side. But because of that, I really got to discover a side of myself that I didn't know I had in there, and that I could be this business owner. And then I really took hold of that. I was like, hey, I'm a business owner. I'm going to grow this thing. I'm going to make it all that I want to be, and could be whatever I want it to be. And I really set out to diversify what I was doing. And that was really fun. And probably the thing I like most about my work now, and when I'm in reflection, I'm like, the thing I really, really love is that I have all this diversity. Like I work in a pediatric clinic, I get to do home visits, I work in a dentist office, I work in a birth center, and I do corporate lactation. And to have all those different facets to just use my skills in so many different ways, I just am so grateful. But again, it's like in the reflection, I don't know that I would ever do anything different. I was thinking through that as we were preparing for this. I'm like, is there anything that I'd be like, gee, I wish I had XYZ, other than like switching to electronic charting faster? I so wish I had done that. I drug my heels on that. I was like, no, paper's life. I was holding on to that for so that's the one thing that I would say, because I'm still dealing with those dang paper charts that live in my house in a giant filing cabinet that drives me bonkers. But other than that, I have nothing that I'm like, I wish I had done this differently. I think I was so glad we did this talk today, because I'm like, it's really fun to look back and take a moment and see what did I learn? How did I grow? How did we change over these 10 years? And to think it's 10 stinking years. I mean, 10 years is a long time. When I started, I had a 2-year-old that I was nursing, and I remember going to a conference. It was the last conference. He stopped nursing after that, and like, it's so poignant in my life, because I remember sitting in that conference and trying to debate, like, do I remove the milk or not? Like, he was 3.5. So I'm like, I could probably just leave it and see what happens when I get back home, So it's kind of funny to see how it's all evolved. It's interesting things to reflect on, right, Annie? It's so interesting.
It is.
To take the moment to think about it all.
If I would change anything, I do feel like I wish that I had more confidence in myself as a business owner in the beginning, and taken that side of things more seriously than I did. And I also wish that I had retired from volunteer work as a LHA League leader like years earlier than I actually did. And one of the reasons I didn't do it is because I remember when I was getting my hours as a LHA League leader and hearing this kind of buzz at area conferences or at leader retreats, where they were like, there's some people that just become leaders so they can become IBCLCs, and being like, well, I have to prove to them that I'm not one of those. And you know what? I'm like, I wish that I didn't feel like I had to prove something to them. I wish I'd recognized that the only person I needed to prove something to was myself, and that I did become a LHA League leader to become an IBCLC. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I gave more to LHA League in those early years than I gave to my private practice. In retrospect, my energy was unbalanced in the wrong way because of my sense of obligation and duty, and wanting to honor that relationship and honor what I was able to get from LHA League long after it was still even a group that I even believed in anymore. I guess the only thing I would change is I would tell Annie of 10 years ago,
you can let this go.
You can let this go, because this is not where your heart is. This is not where your passion is. And everything is going to be okay if you retire.
Yeah. I know that is such hard. We even did a whole episode on that transition. That is definitely a hard transition. But yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of fun to think through, and I like to think back and then forward, in the sense of like the lessons that I'm going to take forward with me. And I really feel like the confidence piece is huge. I spent so many years thinking, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. And it wasn't until somebody was like, wow, Leah, look at all you've built. And I was like, I guess I kind of know what I'm doing, or at least I've had some really good luck or something. I don't know. But it was like, oh, wow, I can take that confidence forward. And then the openness to continue. I think we've mentioned this before. Like, I've always been open to learning more. And I really appreciate that about my 10-year journey, is that I've never stopped and been like, I'm a really good lactation consultant. I don't need to know anything else. I'm actually like feel like I have a fourth of the knowledge that's out there, and I want the other 3/4 in my brain at some point when it will fit. I keep cramming it in there, but sometimes it's like, it won't go. I want to take that forward for the rest of my journey, like to never feel like I've done it all, I know it all, but to know that there's just a never ending amount of information, not just from the textbooks and conferences, but also from every baby and family interaction that I have. There's something to learn in that moment. And I try to stay really open to that. Like, what am I going to take away from this? Not just give to this family. You know, there's always something I can learn. And it can be super simple things about how I want to explain something and them grasping it and like, hey, I just learned, I got that great feedback, but also big things about things I need to shift in me, you know, and continue to grow as a person so I can give from the right place. And yeah, so I think there's a lot to keep taking these lessons that we've figured out and keep carrying them forward for us and keep evolving. Super cool.
Definitely.
So I would make a call to action for everybody to, no matter where you are in your business, whether you've had the business for 6 months or 5 years, or maybe you're somebody who's been in business way longer than Annie and I and have, you know, like so much wisdom, but take a moment as we wrap up to think through where you're at in your business and what you've learned and how you want to keep growing and learning. And these reflection times are super important as we continue to evolve.
And you don't need a reason to reflect. I mean,
no, it doesn't have to be a milestone.
It does not have to be a milestone. And I think about, just to build on what Leah said and where, you know, I'm at as I think about winding down the year and am in that reflective state, is that I hear myself on consults, you know, virtual consults or during home visits. And I hear the way I'm able to talk to families and the assurance that I have, just that those things where I'm like, I do feel really comfortable working with families. And I had a recognition recently. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the danger point, is because this is where you start to say, I know what I know and I'm good at what I do. There are things that I'm saying now that are not as right as they could be, as I will come to discover. And so I think if anything, like 10 years is a moment to just go deeper into that humility that we need to have to let, you know, babies be our teachers and parents be our teachers and our colleagues be our teachers and our experience be a teacher, and not rest on the things that we know we're good at. So that's your deep thought for going into
I know. We always get
the end of the year.
I love it. I love it so much. It always makes me feel so like, I have so many wonderful things to think through when we get off these talks. I love it so much.
I do too.
For another
year. We are looking forward to some quiet time over the holiday break and then coming back in January with some new episodes and a deeper dive that might end up with a shorter name. But for right now, the working title is I am so done with this pandemic, but this pandemic is not done with my private practice. So that will be in January. You can learn more about our deeper dives at lactationbusinesscoaching.com. And it is always a pleasure, Leah.
Yes, always. Look forward to talking again soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. To learn more about our monthly deeper dives and how to support our podcast for as little as $1 a month, visit lactationbusinesscoaching.com. Don't forget to leave us a rating and hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode.